I'm sure that most of you have heard by now the accreditation news we received about a month ago was on February 13th, and the related sanctions that came along with that. So what we wanted to do is give you an update of what those things actually mean, and then provide some information for you that we think is going to be helpful in just clarifying communication, give you a quick update also on where we are in our response process, and then what the remainder of the spring semester and the summer and the fall look like for us as we go through this accreditation response process. For those of you who I haven't had the privilege of meeting yet, my name is Stan Carasosa, and I'm Superintendent President with College of the Sequoias. And again, thank you for taking a little time to be here with us this evening. We're going to start by giving you a little bit of a recap of what's actually happened, and then what we're in the process of doing, and then, as I said, again, how it looks in the near future. But first, if you go back to February 13th, a day that I say will live in infamy, at least in my mind, we got notice from the accrediting body. They're called the ACCJC. It stands for the Accrediting Commission for Community and Junior Colleges, but it's our accrediting body, that College of the Sequoias was what they call substantially non-compliant in 5 key areas that they made recommendations. This is an accrediting body. It comes through and it reviews and evaluates our program from top to bottom, and it gives us a scorecard, if you will, and based on the results of that scorecard, we earn our accreditation or we have to make improvements to continue to earn our accreditation. And really what happened with us is we got what's called an order for show cause. It's a serious matter. It's the most serious sanction that an institution can receive. And what the words come from, show cause, comes from a phrase in the law that says you must show cause now to the accrediting body why you should remain accredited, and in effect remain open. Because for those of us who work in the college business, you know that if we're not an accredited institution, we lose our lifeline, really, our connection with Cal State, with UC, with any post-secondary colleges, or anywhere that we certify our certificates for employment and training and so on. So it's a big deal that we remain an accredited institution. So we're not here to downplay the seriousness of it. We are here to tell you that it is a serious matter, that we're taking it very seriously, but we're also here, hopefully, to provide you some reassurance, because we think that the challenges that we face are fixable within the amount of time that we have. Here's kind of the shorter version, and I know it'll sound long, but trust me, it's the shorter version of what's actually happened. We go through an accreditation every 6 years, and the last 6-year cycle for us was 2006, and the most recent cycle for which we received this show cause order was 2012. What happens during a 6-year period is you have an opportunity to make improvements on recommendations that are cited from one accreditation to the next, and the visiting team comes back out to do an on-campus review and an evaluation after the 6-year period. They spend a week on your campus, about 14 people. So it's a fairly substantial process to go through an accreditation review. They interview everybody from top to bottom. They take a look at all your programs, all your data, all your systems, your budgets, your protocols, your procedures, etc. The show cause order that they issued for us came because we had 5 recommendations that came from 2 primary areas. Area number 1 is what they call institutional efficiency and effectiveness. And in the area of institutional efficiency and effectiveness, we're required to not only have the structures for decision making in our college, and we're required to not only have the committees and the structures for planning, how we plan and evaluate the programs in our college, we're also required to have structures for how those things connect to each other and how they inform the allocation of resources. So what they found when they came in 2012 is that our structures remained in place. We have legally required bodies like an academic senate, which is made up of all faculty. We have a college council, which is a cross-representative of different employee groups from across the college campus. We have a curriculum council, which is all of the division chairs. We have a dean's council, which are all the deans. We have a senior management council, which is the president and the vice president. So what they saw is we have the structures in place. What we didn't have in place was a clear connection between those structures and how decision-making actually takes place. In other words, if an idea was started, or if something needed to be reviewed or revised, if a change was needed to be made, how would it begin in that cycle, and how would it go through those different bodies to have input, feedback, recommendations, to ultimately end up in some form of an action or a recommendation to the board. So when the college came, they found that we were deficient in being able to clearly show those connections. So as a visiting team, what they said is we really can't, as newcomers to your campus, we really can't see how decisions are made here. We know that you do some good things, and we know that you produce some good outcomes, but we're worried as a publicly funded institution that if an outsider can't understand how your system operates, that maybe it's fragile, and you need to get that stronger. You need to have it more clear. So they were looking for a manual. They were looking for diagrams that explained what each committee does. They were looking for how decisions get made and where there are opportunities to move a decision through the process if it gets stalled. All of those things. So in the area of institutional efficiency and effectiveness, we were not clear enough and not strong enough in those connections between decision-making, planning, and resources. Okay? So out of that area came two big recommendations that we have to work on to comply. We have to fix those systems. We have to complete them. The second area was a different standard. It was called student learning outcomes, and it comes under the academic and institutional performance part of the program. And what the law requires now for you to be an accredited institution is it requires that you have student learning outcomes, basically goals for every class that a student would take, that as the instructor, these are the things I expect students to know and be able to do as a completion of my class. Each instructor has the freedom right now, the academic freedom, to write their own student learning outcomes. So if I teach anthropology and I select my books and my materials and my experiences, I can write the SLOs for my anthropology class. I also have to write an assessment. I have to show at the end of my course, how am I going to measure these? How am I going to know what students did and didn't learn and achieve? And then finally, I have to give that assessment, and I have to use the data to reflect on the instruction and put it into a process of continuous improvement, and hopefully look at the results of the student outcomes and say, okay, should I adjust my curriculum? Should I adjust my teaching? How can I make the process better? Because my goal is to have the highest percentage of students possible succeed and pass my class at the highest rates. And then there's one more level of outcome, and it's bigger than just an individual class. It's about the institution. So they're looking at outcomes that we're required to measure by law. Things like, what are the graduation rates of your students who come in with the plan to earn an associate arts degree, and what percentage of them really do it? And how long does it take? And what about students who come just to transfer to four-year university? How many students actually transfer, successfully transfer, and how long does it take? What about students who come for a workplace certificate, a training, or a license? Do they complete the program? Do they earn their license? Are they placed in employment? And how long does that take? So we've got those service area outcomes that we have to put in as well. We actually have many of those in place. What we didn't do a good job of showing is where they all are and how we account for them every year. Do we put them together in an annual college report? Do we look at the same goal outcomes year after year to measure the trend data? That's where we need to get stronger. So area number one was in our organizational planning and decision making. Area number two was in getting these student learning outcomes written, tested, and reflected upon, and then the institutional outcomes measured and reflected upon annually. And the whole goal is to use that results data to make yourself better on an annual basis. It sounds pretty straightforward. It sounds pretty logical, especially if you come from any private business or private sector. But we are an institution and we are a bureaucracy, and so things didn't happen fast enough. So when I was getting the phone call from the director of the Accrediting Commission, and she was telling us that these were the two areas that we were deficient, and they totaled 5 recommendations, I said, gee, it seems to me like these are problems that we can fix. And I feel a little concerned that you've issued the most serious sanction for what seems like pretty fixable problems. Granted, they're important, but it's not like we're going bankrupt, and it's not like we have a dysfunctional board. Those are the two areas where most colleges get sanctioned. They haven't managed their money, and their board of trustees is micromanaging or fighting against one city versus the other. We didn't have any of those challenges. We had internal challenges with our systems. And her response to me was this. She said, Mr. Carasoso, I'm sorry to share this with you, and I apologize that you're new and this is all happening right now. But she said, here's the reality if you look at it from the commission's perspective. We gave you an accreditation in 2006. I'm going to go back to 6 years ago. And she said, if you looked at the 2006 accreditation, you got 5 recommendations. Guess what? They were the same 5 recommendations 6 years ago. And in fact, we put you on warning at that time. So you had to give us progress reports, and you were showing us over the first 3 years of that 6-year period that you were making progress. So when we read your report from 2009, halfway through your 6 years, we expected to come back in 2012 and see this complete. And instead, it remains substantially incomplete. So we knew we had some of the work done, we didn't have it all done, and we didn't have it done completely enough for having had the 6 years to really address the issue. So that's the reason. She said, you know, we feel like we could have given you a warning, but we already gave you a warning. We could have put you on probation, that was the next step, but you just had 6 years. So our only tool left was we wrote you an order to now show us cause. So we immediately, you know, after we got over the initial kind of shock, because we believed that we would get a warning of some kind and or maybe probation. We didn't think it would rise to this level, but it certainly has caught everyone's attention, and it's an important issue for us. So we've immediately we formed an accreditation response task force. We handpicked 40 people from across the campus, a combination of faculty, students, and classified staff. That group of 40 people now meets every week. Every Thursday we meet, and every Thursday we report on the work that we're doing in between those weekly meetings. The task force of 40 has been broken up into 5 small groups, and each one of those groups now is in charge of responding to one of those 5 recommendations, taking it apart, knowing what policies need to be changed or procedures, if any, developing the action plan for implementation, figuring out the ways to communicate with the faculty, telling us what resources do you need. Do you need additional technology? Do we need more materials? Do you need more time to be able to communicate and train faculty? So the 5 groups are working on each of those recommendations. They've all developed a timeline. And the good news is we think that we're going to have at least the majority of the heavy lifting done before we break in June. Because we have to be ready to submit a report by October, and July and August are summer months, and we don't have a lot of staff active throughout the summer. So we've set an aggressive timeline to get the majority of the work completed by June. There'll be a handful of staff and the rest of the administrators who work over the summer to compile all of our material into the report, to show the action plans, to show our timelines, to show what we have done and what we will do. Because some of this stuff you can't put on paper what you didn't do yet. And so we've got some stuff that we have to wait until the fall semester to be completed. For example, a full testing cycle for our fall classes. All we'll be able to show by October is that we tested our spring classes, and here's the schedule to test our fall classes. But the faculty has rolled up their sleeves. Everybody has been very positive. You know, it is a lot of hard work. I think we've all taken it very seriously, and I think we all, you know, we all take a lot of pride in the fact that we do not want COS to be in this status. We know that we're a good institution. One of the ironies is that when the accrediting team was here, they shared with us, you know, we have no real issue with your results. Your end product as College of the Sequoias is very good. You have good success rates when your students go on to college. You have good matriculation rates. You have good certification programs. We have a state award-winning nursing program. We have a state-recognized police academy. We have a nationally honored architectural division. We've got a strong ag program. We have great career technical education and certificate programs. So they said, you know, we don't have a big issue with your results. You produce good results. We're worried that you don't have the structures in place in your institution for it to sustain itself over time. And that's what we're worried about. We're here to make the institution better. We're here to make a good investment of the taxpayers' dollars. And so if you're going to be supported by the state budget, we need to feel confident that you've got a strong institution. So with that task force in place and the subgroups in place, they're working hard on all of these responses right now. We've hired two one a retired community college administrator, one is a currently active community college administrator. They both have areas of expertise that fit our two key areas. One of them is very strong in institutional planning and decision-making processes. And the other is currently a director of research for another community college, and he's very strong in building an action plan for completing the student learning outcomes. So we're getting some consultant support to help us and guide us on the things that we may not have the experience to do. And then the last piece we put into place is we've appointed an Accreditation Community Advisory Committee. Our show cause order also required us to meet some elements of public disclosure. We have to report publicly what we're doing. We have to reach out and engage our community. So we've formed a community advisory committee. We have 25 members. They're representatives from Tulare, from Hanford, and from Visalia. They're meeting every 2 weeks. And every 2 weeks when they come in for a morning meeting on a Friday with us, we share with them the meeting agendas and the minutes from the task force meetings. We share with them the progress being made by the subgroups in each of those 5 recommendation areas. We share with them any information that our consultants are sharing with us. We give them drafts of any of the products that we're starting to produce, whether they're diagrams or flow charts for how the report will look and how it will operate. And we're asking them to be our advocates. We're educating them. We're giving them facts and information so that they can go out into their communities, either at their service clubs or at their church or at the store, and they can talk educatedly about what's going on at COS, and they can say, we're involved, we're connected, we see what's happening, and we have confidence in their process. So from all aspects right now, while it's been a bit of an earth-shaking event for our institution, we see ourselves getting better from the process. We see ourselves coming out of this stronger and a more, a more efficient and productive institution. And in the end, we think we're going to be, we're going to be really effective and efficient in the areas that they've asked us to improve. And that's all a good thing, even though it's a little stressful to go through the process. That's all a very good thing. So what we have for you that you've picked up is either a little quarter panel card or a fact sheet. They both have the same information on them, but you know, in today's world of technology, we have the iPhone 6 and Microsoft Outlook 11 and Windows 10. Well, we're now COS 2.0. And so you can see we've hit the reset button, and we're going to make sure that we come out of this a new, better, more effective institution, and we continue serving all of you. These bullets here kind of represent the same talking points that I've just shared with you, but they also include things that are important to make sure our students know and our parents know. For example, even though we have this show cause order, we're a fully accredited institution. Our accreditation has not been removed. We have all of the rights and privileges as a college that we've always had. So we're eligible for our state funding. Courses that students take here are all transferable. Transcripts are all legitimate and valid. Students who are here are eligible for their financial aid. Nothing changes about our institution. And that's important because we, as you can imagine, when the news broke and the only thing that people had were the headlines in the local paper to deal with, they were calling us and they were saying, you know, my gosh, COS has been here for a long time. We hear you're closing down. We hear that the classes are being canceled. We hear that you won't be open next semester. So we started this process, coming out, talking, preparing information, and sharing it. I'm personally visiting all 10 of the feeder high schools that come into College of the Sequoias from our district. And I was sharing with the ladies, by Thursday of this week, We will have personally visited with the faculty and the counselors at all 10 of those feeder high schools. And we're giving them the same facts and information before spring break, because when we come back, students begin registration for next semester. So I think we've got a great system in place to respond to this. I think it's going to be a lot of hard work, but we're up for the challenge. I started by sharing with all of you that we're not trying to sugarcoat this. It's serious, and we're taking it serious. But I guess I want to finish with this, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions that you all might have. You know, COS is an 86-year-old institution in this region. I think we've served the South Valley in good faith for a long time. We've built traditions of success in academic achievement, vocations, training, career technical, and we've hit a bump in the road. This is one of those challenging times for your community college, and I'm here to humbly ask that you stand by us, that you continue to support us in the community, and let folks know that you've met with the administration and the president, and you have confidence in what we're trying to do. Because we believe 100% that we will remain an accredited institution, and we'll do the work necessary to remain accredited. When we finish the work throughout the summer, we submit our report in October. A visiting team will come out again in November of 2013. So in just a handful of months, we'll have a new team come out, and they'll spend another week on our campus, and they're going to turn over every rock, and they're going to look under every nook and cranny. And we'll make sure that we're fully compliant. The thing that they'll probably do, they have to then compile their report, and they submit it to the commission. The commission meets in January and June of every year. So they'll meet again next January to rule on the visits they have this fall. So we'll get the word next January about whether or not we were compliant enough to continue to get more time to finish our implementation. I'm 100% confident that we will be, but we wanted to be honest with all of you and say that's the timeline, and that's when we would find out. We would find out in early spring, January of 2014. And we look forward to a bit of a celebration at that point, because we know we're putting a lot of work in place to continue to be able to serve you for another 86 years. So I've been rambling for 20 minutes. Is there anything that I can answer for any of you? Any questions, comments, any rumors that we can dispel or confirm, whatever the case may be? Yes, sir.
I mean, early or late. I thought I had a time for 5:30.
Yeah, it was 5 o'clock, but you didn't miss too much. You got here.
My question had to do with the community advisory committee, because I was disappointed I didn't see anything in the paper, or maybe I missed it.
Yeah, there was an open invitation, and then we also sent out requests to any volunteers that came forward. But I can tell you it's fluid, and it's not exclusive. So if any of you, or if you know people who would like to serve on the community advisory committee, and you give me your email address, I'll go back and put you on the mailing list tomorrow. They meet every 2 weeks, and it's open to anyone who's interested in serving.
Is the list published somewhere?
Yes, it's on our webpage. In fact, one of the things that I'd like to point out is that we do have a really good webpage now. We've always had a great website, but we built this webpage specifically for accreditation. So if you go onto the COS website, and if you click on the page for accreditation, you'll be able to see lots of information that we're putting there just for this purpose. And what's on there is the membership list of our response task force, which is the faculty, students, and staff that are serving, and the membership list for the community advisory committee. And their calendar for meeting dates, schedules, times, and place is there. And if you email that address right there, there's a place for you to email right back to the accreditation page. We have staff retrieving those emails and sending them to the proper administrator. And if you simply request an interest in being on the community advisory committee, you provide us your name, your address, and your email address. We will add you to the list, and you'll be invited in the next 2 weeks.
I'm the president of the Tulare County Grand Jury Chapter, and so...
I thought I recognized you, because you've been visiting some of our meetings. Yeah.
Yes, so we want to have somebody on from our chapter.
We would love that.
Okay,
We would love that.
We'll get back to you. Thank you.
Great.
My question is, how much support are you getting from the Board of Trustees about this? Because I have to say, from a parent's point of view, an alumni point of view, and an educator's point of view, that your board is dysfunctional. They should have gotten a hold of this a lot sooner. And I emailed a board member right after this all came out in the paper. Gave him my phone numbers, their address, email, nothing. I will work hard to make sure that individual is not reelected. I am not competent to run for office. Okay, I'm just a second grade teacher. But the sense that I have, and from talking to other people in the community, is that the board really dropped the ball, because they're the ones ultimately, you've had a year, you know, nobody's going to chop your head off for this. But the board dropped the ball. They didn't follow through.
Yeah,
How can they not be called dysfunctional?
Yeah, let me respond to that. Dysfunctional is a pretty broad term, and it can mean a lot of things.
I totally agree.
So what I would say is, and you're right, I've only been on the scene about 7 months, and the actual accreditation report had already been sent off by the time I got here. It was an autopsy, really, of the last 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the way I've tried to understand it in my mind, because I'm learning, like you, I was a K-12 educator for a number of
I
years.
realize that.
And so I'm learning a little bit how the community college landscape is different. And what I've learned is this, that during that same 6-year period, I think you need to look back and kind of take stock of the rest of the things that were going on and who was primarily responsible for what. Ultimately, you are absolutely right. The board is responsible. They're the elected officials, and they're responsible. And I'm very used to a governing board at the K-12 level being highly accountable for everything.
Mm-hmm.
There is a little difference in the community college system based on how the education code is written. So when you go to the California Education Code, and you go to Title V, which is the section for community colleges, and you go to past legislation like Senate Bill 1725, it describes the legal roles for decision-making on a community college campus. And unlike K-12, what I learned is in the community college, there is some legal authority given, for example, to an academic senate, which is a faculty-based group. So issues primarily of academics, things like student learning outcomes and courses and curriculum, by law in the education code, come under faculty, at least faculty leadership and authority for making final recommendations to the board, even though the board does have the perfunctory responsibility to adopt those or ratify those. Or, as you pointed out, a board can always disagree with them if there's a reason to. So there's enough blame, I guess, to go around on this one. And I do believe that you're right. A board ultimately isn't accountable. I would argue a superintendent president should be accountable. There's a number of things that I realize I have to delegate according to the education code, but I don't get to abdicate the responsibility. You have to have a way of making sure whoever you delegate to gets it done. But not to make excuses, but to give a complete context, during that same period of time, that 6 years from 2006 to 2012, the college district passed 3 high-profile property taxes. Measure C in Hanford, Measure I in Visalia, Measure J in Tulare. And they had an aggressive construction and modernization plan. So that 5-member board, which remember comes from different cities, they only meet once a month, they had as their #1 priority, and rightly so, monitoring hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money. Because we know if they would have blundered that taxpayer dollars, there'd be a bigger room of angry people here than what we have today. So in their defense, I guess, the administration and the board, I would argue maybe the president was very focused at that time, Dr. Scroggins, very focused on the expansion of the college. And rightly so. So we built the campus in Hanford. Took 2 years, took over $25 million, a lot of time and attention. The next 2 years, we modernized the campus in Visalia. The last 2 years, we put $42 million into the campus we're sitting on today. So while they may not have been able to keep their eye close enough on every academic issue that we were deficient, they were paying a lot of attention to the hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money. So over here, if you go back to the education code and the academic stuff primarily coming under the academic administration and the faculty, my question is, we should have been, or my thought is, we should have been watching that more closely, and we should have had a better understanding of how far behind we were falling in relationship to the 2006, and that's really the area that we didn't do as well as we could have. I will say this too, it's not as though we don't have any student learning outcomes written. We have 846 different classes at COS. 95% of them have all their SLOs complete. That's pretty good. I don't know what grade level you teach.
I
but
teach second grade, and
Okay.
I've been teaching for 23 years.
Right,
So I've spent a big chunk of the last 15
at least 10.
talking about standards and
Absolutely.
outcomes and all of that. And
Right.
if I can't tie it to a standard in my lesson plans, it's not going to happen in my classroom.
I get it. I lived that.
And you know, here in Tulare, they are very particular about it.
Pretty prescriptive.
And so when my child brings home a syllabus from a class, and there is a very general statement at the top of it, there's no overreaching statement of, you know, this is something that all students who take psychology or English 1 or whatever learn.
Right.
There is a requirement, something on the syllabus that has, you need to buy all 3 books, but there's nothing about reading assignments. There's no listed reading assignments. The student's not given them in class either, by the way. You know, we've spent a lot of the last 15 years being exact and teaching these kids what standards are. In high schools here, at least in Tulare, the standards are at the top of every teacher's syllabus. It's the first thing they go over every day. It's on the bulletin board. What you're telling me is each teacher can decide what they want their outcome to be. There's no, I mean, I'm shocked. There's no universal standard for what you should know at the end
Yeah.
of abnormal psychology.
And you shouldn't be shocked because it's not, it is the norm in the post-secondary institution.
That's mind-boggling.
Yeah, you won't go to any community college, four-year college, UC, or private university and find standardized curriculum. It's not in the universities, it's not in the university. So there is another law on the books that grants those instructors academic freedom. And that's part of the collision, I think. If I have academic freedom under the law as a college instructor, but I'm being told under the law that I have to write learning outcomes, I might push back a little bit, right? I might say, hey, I have academic freedom. You can't tell me to write learning outcomes. And every college has some of that. Our college has some too. But what the law is saying, what the Accrediting Commission is saying, is you do have academic freedom because you get to write the outcomes. But you can't not have outcomes. You see where we're going?
Yeah.
So it's for those of us who have had a life in K-12, it's where we were in 1996, when the first couple of times your principal came into all the second grade teachers and said, we're going to standardize this. You guys didn't jump on it right away. It took you 3 years, at least.
You have to do it immediately.
Yeah, well, but I mean, in terms of full implementation, right?
Yeah. Totally.
So we're at that earlier place at the college level where K-12 was some time ago. There aren't going to be those same kinds of clear standards. It very much is an adult world. And remember, the difference, I think, is college is not compulsory. College is not required. So that's different than K-12 as well. And which is why we're a little nervous now, because when a college gets a poor accreditation, it isn't like a high school that goes through WASC or an elementary school that maybe goes through their PQR and you don't get good grade. You'll get support and system from the Department of Education until you get better, because they can't close you down. You have to be there because it's the law for children to go to school. A community college, we're optional. So there's 112 colleges left in the system. There used to be 115. 3 have been shut down. And in a state budget crisis, all that means is more money for the rest. So we have to take this seriously. And that's why I think our faculty has responded. And I do want to give our faculty a tremendous amount of credit because, like I said, we have 846 classes. 99% of them have all the learning outcomes written. 50% of those actually have all the assessments done. The smallest portion of our faculty are those that actually have the outcomes written, the assessments done, and are giving the assessments and then collaborating. That's the area where we need to we have to close that loop. And so that's why I think it's doable, because we have a lot done, we just didn't have enough done after the 6-year period for them to feel like we had made enough progress.
The wife and I have been longtime residents here and both graduates from COS more than once on some occasions.
Numerous times.
We have a great deal of respect for the college and the institution and that sort of thing. That being said, for many, many years from other agencies and walks, we've heard nothing, not nothing, but we've heard the good things from COS, but also what's been called the arrogance of COS. That they're the big fish in the pond around here, and whatever they decide they want to do is what they'll do, and did for many, many years. And the things that you've just cited in terms of the campus over at Hanford and the one here, I have no illusions that the only reason those two have happened is because COS is landlocked. If COS had the property around there, neither one of these institutions would be here, in my opinion. And that's, again, that's just my opinion, but it goes right along with what you said. I don't think they're dysfunctional. I think it's an air of arrogance. And they finally got the message that somebody around here is serious about it. You'd better do it or you're out the door, because nobody else held them accountable. I don't know how many members of the current board that was on there in 2006. I suspect most of them were. And also most of the personnel that had responsibility for it knew about it. But from my opinion, my perspective, what I read in the paper, I felt like the board and everybody else felt like, okay, we'll do it if we want to. Now, hopefully I'm wrong, and I wish you well. I hope everything's going to go well, and I suspect you will, because finally somebody has taken control and said, you better do it or out.
Right.
And so I believe you will.
If you're referring to the recent news that's been in the paper, we've tried to be a combination of two things. What I've tried to share with you today. We've tried to be honest and tell you this is serious, but we've also tried to be reassuring and tell you we're going to do whatever it takes to get it done.
I understand, and I believe that.
Yeah.
Now,
It's a fine line.
but it's clear to me, based upon my background as shared with you, I didn't get that impression at all. I wasn't surprised at all with what I read in the paper. Now,
well, this
that's
is
for whatever it's worth, but that's from a private citizen that's sitting on the outside, been through the school, has a lot of respect for it. But I think you finally, the board, not you, the board finally realized that they better shape up. And I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would say, I agree with you, I think the board needs to be held accountable, but they can't make things happen at that institution without the institution's cooperation.
Correct.
So I think
they are the final authority on it. I mean, they've got a part in it.
They do, definitely.
Again, I agree with you.
I think that
there's a lot of players in this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the
But
era.
there's a lot of folks in here that finally, those players, collectively, didn't take it seriously 6 years ago, or seriously enough.
Yeah, I think the last statement there about this being kind of a collective wake-up call for the board, the faculty, the administration. That's exactly how we're interpreting it. It is a collective wake-up call for everybody, and we're trying not to overly place specific blame. My feeling is there's plenty of blame to go around. A board should have been more in tune, a management should have been more accountable, and a group of faculty should have taken responsibility. And all of those things combined, I think, we didn't get it done fast enough.
Right, and I don't want to beat the dead horse, but again, that's my background.
Well, thank you for that. Those opinions and feedback are valuable for us.
A lot of people read that paper and said, I'm not surprised.
I appreciate your input.
And you got my support.
Yes, ma'am.
I come from the world of federal dollars, and so we're all about monitoring. And, you know, my agency as well has had issues, you know, that we've had to fix, and not as serious as this, but fix. So once all of this work is done, and I have every confidence that you are the person to do this.
No pressure, right?
No pressure. I was pleased when you were selected as the college president, and you know, I see you at the EDC and several other different meetings.
Right.
So I think that you have the ability to do this. But my question to you is, number one, all right, so all of this work is done and all of these documents are in place. Have you thought about, or what kind of monitoring tool will you use to make sure that everything continues to roll forward? Because it's not just having it in place, there's got to be some monitoring coming with it.
Yeah, actually, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to build that in as an ongoing institutional practice. And when you get an accreditation sanction that requires you to show the connectivity between your decision-making structure and your planning, and then show how you evaluate the effectiveness of your system on an annual basis, I thought it was a gift, as much work as it is, to be able to become compliant by showing that we have an operational system, explaining how it works, and then actually implementing and using it as the very tool to determine whether it's effective the next year, and revise and change annually as needed. So we're actually building that into the system. So it's going to be in a document and a book because it needs to be understandable, but it's going to be operational by practice on an annual basis. That's our plan.
Is it your plan also then to have like lessons learned, you know, about this, and best practices? I mean, those are terms from my world, but you know, lessons learned and best practices. What is it that we did this well, we did not, and then document that in some way?
Yes, because in the cycle of continuous improvement, one of the things we have to build in is not only how do all the pieces work together, but at the end of that process, was that process effective in relationship to the organization's greater goals and objectives? So let's say the big picture goals for us are improving percentages of students who complete AA degrees, improving percentages of students who matriculate, improving percentages of certificates and degrees. The three big pies in the sky. Then as this institution, then you've got your strategic plan, which is your action to actually, how do you do that on the ground level? And then each department lines up their goals. The courses that I teach, when I offer them, the students that they address, are all geared toward, if I'm anthropology, how can I improve the percentage of students passing anthropology, because that contributes to the AA goal, that contributes to the matriculation goal, and line up all the systems like that. And then each year, analyze those results and identify your best practices. If something's not working, adjust it, fix it, implement a best practice, re-implement the cycle, monitor it again the following year.
So do you see that process then happening on a committee level, or who would be in charge, for lack of a better word, of that process continuing to happen?
I think that process is going to be codified now in board policy and administrative procedure so that it can be monitored by the board on a regular basis. And the president and the senior management are going to be held accountable for the implementation of it. And then each of the players along the way have to do their part. If a share of legal responsibility falls with our faculty under academic senate, we're going to define what the ed code says they have to do. And it's really the administration's responsibility to interact with them in a positive way, to make sure that they're doing their part or their share. And one of the things that happens, we've visited, for example, last week we went over to Cuesta Community College. Cuesta just came off of a show cause order like we did. And they talked about having to make some changes in putting time frames, for example, on how things moved through the decision-making process. If something's supposed to go through the decision-making process to be reviewed and approved by the board, and it has the ability in the system to land, let's say, at the college council level and then get stuck there. Because college council couldn't make a decision, they couldn't reach an agreement, there was no consensus, they said, we'll bring it back next meeting. Well, they only meet twice a month, so if they took it up for 4 meetings, it's been sitting there for 2 months. What we have to build in is a time frame after which If it doesn't move through this element of the machine, it goes on to the next level, and they've had their opportunity to participate. That's what we didn't have at COS.
Okay.
So we had things that could get to one committee level or one accountability level and stop.
Yeah, I understand.
I mean, and stop indefinitely.
Yeah.
So now we've got timeframes built in, and now we have clearly identified the code sections in the education code that give the board the authority to write policy that says if something stays at one level of the interior structure for more than 60 days, it's had its opportunity for input, it moves on with or without agreement, with or without consensus, with or without approval. And that's a new deal for our system, because they've been used to, if we don't agree on something at our level, we can just stop it here, and we're not going to worry about it because we're not approving it. We can't do that.
Is that kind of your academic freedom pushback?
A little bit, and some of it is a tug of war in the education code where the academic senate as faculty have legal responsibility for key things of curriculum, instruction, assessments, content. But if they don't get it done, or if they take too long to reach an agreement, if they get paralysis from analysis, and it's a legal requirement for accreditation, the board needs to be able to move that thing along. Because in the end, the board's accountable. Our board's the one kind of standing up on the cross right now when some of the things were stalled at different levels, not necessarily them, but ultimately they're the ones that are accountable.
Well, that's some of the perception on it, too, is the board and kind of being pushed around by the teachers' union, or if you would.
Well, there are those factions.
There's a lot of strength there.
There are those factions, and you know, it's an interesting dynamic to be on an elected board when your role is to delegate to your administration and hold them accountable, and then to have systems, policies, and procedures in place that hold people accountable. And I think a good system has a good relationship, a good professional governance relationship between the board and the superintendent. And I can't speak to how their relationship was with the previous superintendent president. I'm sure they had a good relationship because they got a lot done. They passed taxes, they built new campuses, some great things got done. But in terms of internal operations, that's an area where I bring a lot of experience and a lot of expertise in helping a governing board interpret the education code and be able to put the policies and procedures in place that assure them to be able to be accountable for their work. And I don't see a lot of evidence of that in the current policies at COS. So that's what we're doing revisions to, are those policies. And honestly, we're training, in some cases, we're educating the board for the first time on opportunities, legal materials that they have the ability to change that they weren't aware of. So there's some responsibility for your administrator to be training and teaching your board those things. But they don't read the education code.
How does the banking time work with the staff, the faculty?
Larry might be able to explain that a little bit better because he's got more experience with it than I do. But they have the opportunity. In another profession, we would call it comp time. It's banking time because I'm doing something during time that I'm not paid for, and instead of getting paid overtime or additional compensation for it, I'm accumulating a bank of time that I can then use at my discretion later. Is that fair, Larry?
Yeah, and we have had in the past faculty that have banked 5 classes by taking an overload and not getting compensated, and then taking a semester off. They had those 5 classes. Getting back to this gentleman, Mark, I think Stan is my 9th president since I've been here. And I think from the community perspective,
Larry started when he was 12.
the thing that you can be confident in, and I've said this at all my meetings that I go to, COS 2.0 is probably the best thing that could have ever happened to COS. Simply from the standpoint that that course syllabi with those student learning outcomes and that assessment, remember, all of you as parents that have students that go to school, you may not think about the big picture. I'm concerned about my son and daughter who's in the animal science program across the hall here tonight and so it won't matter when this is complete and codified. It won't matter who your board is. It won't matter who your superintendent is. It won't matter who your managers are, because the system will be put into place that will ensure that no matter who comes through the door, the institution is functioning like it is supposed to function with all of those checks and balances in place. And like I say, you know, it was overdue. It was time to do this. And so, yes, it's a harsh way to do it. Of course, Dan just came at the, you know, he was at the wrong place at the wrong time, drive-by shooting.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I think I was at the right place.
But again, you know, everybody can have blame on this whole thing. But again, what's gonna come out of this, you know, in a year from now, is a better institution that's going to concentrate on the student and their outcomes. And that's why we're in business. And on the plus side is that we had our substantive change for this campus, and as soon as we get reaffirmed, this campus is already passed, and as soon as the institution passes, then we're good to go. So that's all of these things that you're hearing will all be taken care of, and we'll have a better institution for the next 86 years, because no matter who comes or goes, the institution will remain solid, and your board and your president and all your managers and faculty will know what the system is, and when they come into that system, they can move right forward with that system no matter how long they're here.
We want to, I think Larry's making a good point. We want to build structures that have integrity, that can last beyond any individual. A president should not come and go and have the institution fall apart, nor should an academic senate chair or anybody else. So we want to build those systems to last. But you know, he's pointing out that it's our goal to make the institution almost failure-proof. It still takes good people to run it. And I get that. I was watching all of your body language going, well, you know, things can change, and that's true. But I think the reason we wanted to engage the public so openly in this, the reason I have that community advisory committee helping us, working with us, is that's going to be part of our posterity arm, that when this is implemented now, there's going to be a lot of people out in the college district that know how things are supposed to operate. And it's not going to be easy for someone to come in and change that, because we've all looked at it and said, these are good structures. This is what's healthy for the institution. This is how we want our community college to operate. And I wouldn't want to be the person who came in and tried to change that. You know, it shouldn't be your goal to change something that's effective. You should review it every year, and you should make it better, but you shouldn't come in and wipe it out and say, no, we don't need those structures anymore. And that's what I think accreditation is going to do for us.
Good luck.
Thank you.
I agree with you. I think you're in the right place at the right time.
No, it's a little different, but you know, you all know a little bit about my background, and having come to Visalia Unified. Visalia Unified was a K-12 system, but it was 34 schools, 27,000 students, and 2,800 employees. And so organizational change is organizational change. In some ways, this is more focused because it's smaller in scope, but deeper in its issues. And then having to learn how the education code applies to the community college has been an interesting education for me. But I feel confident in having had the experiences necessary, especially when you mention things like working with the employee associations, working with collective bargaining, working with governing boards. That's a lot of experience that I have, and I feel fortunate that it's the kind of experience COS will benefit from right now. That's why I say I feel like I'm in the right place at the right time.
I agree.
Because I have some experience that I think can be helpful for the college, and that's what you always want. You want to bring something that the college needs.
My other question for you then is that, okay, we know where we were, and we know where we are, and that you have a plan to move forward. What do you see as the community's role to continue that journey forward and then to make sure we don't fall back to where we were before. Because the community in some way also, you know, we were blithely unaware, oh, they do whatever they want to do.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things that we're building into the plan and to the structures. One is when the accreditation response period is over, there needs to be some way for a community advisory committee to live on.
Right.
You know, and I think what we have at the community college level now is we have advisory committees for programs that need that kind of industry connection. Most of them in our career technical education areas. We have a nursing advisory program, an ag advisory program, law enforcement advisory program. I'm actually talking about just a community advisory committee for the board and the administration, so that there's a mechanism for the community to continue to be engaged on a regular basis, being able to see the changes that have been put into place. And then one of the end results of our new planning guide is that there's an annual college report. It's like our report card to the community. And that needs to be, a commitment needs to be made to publish that. First of all, make a public declaration of your intent. Here's the big 3 or 4 goals we intend to reach. Here's the strategic objectives we're trying to reach on an annual basis to achieve those goals. And then measure them and give you our data and show the community, here's our report on the year. Other community colleges do it, and they do it very well. And if that's being published and marketed out to our community every year, embedded through a community advisory committee, and then taken to the different advisory committees for our vocational programs, I think we're going to have a stronger, consistent presence of community input and involvement, which will create, I hate the term watchdog, but it'll create oversight for us from the community to make sure that they're our partner in staying strong as we go forward. And we're building those right into that planning model. And I had no problem this time around when we put out an invitation for community members. We cut the list off at 25 because it filled up that fast. But we could have 50 because on any given week, if 10 people can't come, we still have a big group. So we're happy to take all comers. We would love for you to email us and request that you be on that mailing list. We'll add you tomorrow.
Well, I think that from your experience here prior, and then coming back, I think that you know that the community as a whole is very, very supportive of education, K through COS.
Absolutely.
And we are willing to do whatever it is that needs to happen to keep the community college a community college, not an offshoot of someone else's community college.
Of course.
It's important for it to stay local. So we now know what it is, and we hope that, certainly Ellen, I hope that you feel comfortable in saying, hey, you know, this is what we need to do, and we will do it. I have confidence that you're right, that Larry is right, that this is a good thing, and that we will be successful. And so, you know, we want you to know that we understand how terribly serious this is, and how much we do support you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And we've gotten similar responses. I think what I love the most about the College of the Sequoias community is the only thing that probably exceeds the love and support that people have for the college is the desire to make sure it succeeds. In other words, whatever you need from us to be accountable, we don't want you to whitewash it. Don't try to put lipstick on a pig here. Tell us what's going wrong so we can help you fix it. And that level of kind of raw honesty resonates well with me. I operate really well in that environment.
It's refreshing.
Anything else for the good of the order today? We're so glad you guys came. And I honestly, I told the staff when we set these meetings up, I go, we may get 2, we may get 200. We're going out there and we're going to talk to our folks. And just so you know, we have been meeting, like I said, with the high school faculties and counselors. We've sent information home to all seniors in our feeders high schools and their parents. So we've been doing trying our very best to do a pretty good job of outreach. And then these forums were just another way. If we can get 10 or 20 people at a time, it's just another way to impact the information that's out there and help people understand.
Guys, saying it's too bad there's not more here, but I think part of it had to do with the early time frame at 5 o'clock. A lot of people getting off at 5 and
Sometimes.
thinking maybe 6:30 or 7.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
who knows? But I appreciate you taking the time.
I
And
appreciate
I
it.
think you're in a good position, on the right track.
Thank you.
Got our support.
I appreciate the fact that you're going to high schools and talking to the counselors, because there is definitely the perception in high schools that, you know, if you're just going to COS, and I'm quoted,
Yeah.
you know, you don't need as much counseling time, you don't need as much of my time. I mean, this isn't necessarily COS's issue as much as it is high schools.
Yeah, maybe so.
But the perception is there. And that's perception that needs to change within our community. As you mentioned, you know, you're the only real physical college presence here in our community, and the chance that we're going to land a 4-year college that's all of our own is, let's face it,
It's hard.
somewhere between slim and none.
It's hard, yeah.
And so for a lot of us, economically, you know, this is the only ballgame in town. And so altering that perception and getting this fixed and altering that perception at a high school level, I think is going to be really essential.
Yeah.
And if I could just speak to that for a moment, I've been with COS since early 2006.
Are we the one
And,
registered?
yeah, going through, I'm part of financial aid outreach, although I originally started in the outreach office. And we have worked really hard over those last several years to establish relationships in the high schools and to ease the transition for students, and have developed a lot of those practices and policies in place so that students can have a face to COS and can have somebody that they connect with. I just concluded my financial aid season, and I visited 29 between district high school and also outside where we're invited to come out. And also community agencies and resources, alternative education sites, court community and day schools, and to ease that transition from high school to COS, and to work with people whose perception may be that those services weren't offered, that we weren't trying actively to recruit students and to have them come to COS, that those are now in place. And if I walk onto any school campus, many of not only counselors, faculty members, and the administrators in high school, but also the students, they get to know me and they would know me by name.
Sure.
So that's, you know,
And
we have
I've
worked.
attended one of those financial aid
Yeah.
seminars, so you are
Thank
very
you.
good at what you do.
Thank
So
you.
I'll say that in front of your boss. You're very good at what you do. You know,
Thank
and
you.
like I said, I don't think that's necessarily COS's issue totally. I think part of it comes from the high schools themselves.
Yeah.
But,
Absolutely.
Hopefully I can make some inroads there. Having had a life here and a career in K-12, I know those superintendents and I know those principals, and we're good friends, we're colleagues. And hopefully just re-emphasizing with our high school counseling staffs this is a chance for us to re-educate them about COS and our traditions, our track record. We need to remarket ourselves a little bit. We can rebrand a little in this process. And that's the best way for high school counselors, I think, to change a little bit of that feeling they may have that, you'll be able to navigate COS just fine. You don't need that much guidance, that much counseling. When you get there, they'll hand you off. I think we can work with them to improve that. Hopefully I have some opportunity to do that. Anything else you can think of today? Well, again, thank you so much. Please take the handouts and information, and please be encouraged to visit our website, and please email us if you would like to be on the Community Advisory Committee. We would love to include you, and we'll hopefully get to hear from you, and hopefully you'll follow us and continue your support.
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, thanks.